When my father died, they didn't just bury a man, they buried our peace. I watched my family's love rot like spoiled fruit, sweet once, now poisoned with greed. The phone rang at 9 that morning. I remember because I was standing by the kitchen window, staring at the magnolia tree that hadn't bloomed in years. It used to be my mother's favorite. She said its white petals reminded her of grace, pure, unearned, undeserved. But Grace hadn't lived in our house for a long time. When I picked up, my sister Clara's voice cracked through the receiver. "He's gone, Maggie. Daddy's gone." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hit me like thunder after lightning, expected, yet still terrifying. My father had been sick for months, but no one ever believes the storm will actually come until it shatters the windows. By the time I reached the old family home, the place already smelled like dust and forgotten promises. My brothers were there, sharp suits and sharper tongues. They didn't look like sons mourning their father. They looked like lawyers preparing for battle. I knew that look too well. My father had worked his whole life to build his business, a small chain of hardware stores across Tennessee, and he'd always said he'd leave it equally among us. But equally is a dangerous word when hearts are ruled by pride. Clara hugged me when I walked in. She had that fragile kind of kindness, too soft for a world that bites. My oldest brother, Peter, didn't even look up. "You made it," he muttered, as if I were late to a meeting instead of a funeral. Then came Samuel, the youngest, the one who'd always found a way to charm his way through life. He smiled, but it wasn't warmth, it was calculation. The funeral itself was quiet, too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that sits on your chest. As the pastor spoke about my father's integrity and hard work, I felt something twist inside me. Those words were true once, but in his final years our father had grown distant, controlling, almost cruel. Maybe it was the illness, maybe bitterness. He'd pushed us apart one by one, demanding loyalty instead of love. After the burial, the storm began, the one that doesn't make thunder but breaks hearts. The will was read in the study, the same room where my father used to teach me how to balance the books. His mahogany desk still smelled faintly of tobacco and power. When the lawyer opened the envelope, everyone leaned forward like predators waiting for prey. It didn't take long for the silence to explode. The house practically shook when Peter slammed his fist on the desk. "This is ridiculous. She gets the house? She gets everything?" His voice echoed through the halls like a curse. I froze. I didn't even understand at first. Me? The house? I had been living in a tiny apartment in Nashville for years, barely scraping by after my divorce. I never asked for anything. And yet, my father had left the home and majority shares of the business to me. Samuel's face twisted with disgust. "You were barely around, Maggie. You abandoned him. And now you get to sit here and smile while we get scraps?" His words cut deeper than I expected. He was right about one thing. I had left. I'd walked away years ago when the shouting became too much, when love turned into leverage. But I hadn't smiled in a long time, and I sure wasn't smiling now. Clara tried to calm them, her voice trembling. Maybe Daddy just wanted to make things right with her. Maybe he regretted... Peter cut her off. "Don't be naive, Clara. He was manipulated. Someone got to him." He turned those cold blue eyes on me. "You." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the dark living room. The house creaked like it remembered every argument, every slammed door, every word that should have been an apology but wasn't. I ran my fingers along the old piano keys. My mother used to play hymns here before she passed. Amazing Grace. It is well with my soul. Funny how those songs sound different when you've lost your faith in people. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed in the wind. For the first time in years, I noticed new buds forming, small, fragile, stubborn things pushing through despite neglect. I wondered if forgiveness could do the same, but forgiveness doesn't come easy when people are still fighting over ghosts. 2 days later, I found Peter standing in the driveway, shouting on his phone. His tone was vicious. "She's not keeping it. I'll contest it all if I have to." He looked at me like I was an intruder on my own porch. You're making a mistake, Maggie. Walk away now, and maybe we'll still be family. His words stung because I still wanted that. Family. I'd prayed for years that somehow God would bring us back together. But sometimes he answers in ways that don't look like mercy at all. That night, I found an envelope slipped under the door. No name, no note. Just a photograph, me at my father's bedside holding his hand. Written on the back in bold ink, "You don't deserve this." My hands trembled. Fear crept up my spine like cold water. Who would do that? My brothers? Someone else from the business? I didn't know. All I knew was that the inheritance I never asked for had become a curse. The next morning, Clara called, her voice low and frightened. "Maggie, you should be careful. Things are getting ugly. Peter hired someone to dig into Dad's finances. He thinks there's something hidden. Something about you." I pressed the phone to my chest and closed my eyes. The old house groaned again like it was warning me. I wasn't sure what was buried here anymore. Love, lies, or both. But I knew one thing. Peace doesn't live in a house full of secrets, and this house was about to tell all of them. The next morning felt different, colder somehow, like the air itself was holding its breath. I woke before sunrise, unable to shake the unease that had crawled under my skin. The house was too quiet. Even the ticking clock in the hallway sounded hesitant, as if it too feared disturbing the ghosts that lived here. I made coffee, though it tasted bitter and wrong, and sat by the window watching the magnolia tree sway in the wind. Its buds had opened overnight, delicate white petals trembling in the chill. For a moment, I thought of my mother again, how she used to say that beauty is stubborn, that it insists on blooming even in broken places. But I didn't feel beautiful. I felt haunted. When I stepped into my father's study, the air seemed thicker. His smell, tobacco, oak, and regret, still clung to everything. I sat at his desk, running my fingers across the leather blotter where he used to sign contracts. That's when I noticed it, one drawer slightly ajar, not enough to be obvious, but enough to draw my attention. Inside, beneath stacks of ledgers and brittle receipts, lay a small wooden box. No lock, no key, just dust and the weight of something forbidden. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me didn't want to know what was inside. But curiosity has a cruel kind of pull. It whispers that the truth will set you free, even when it's about to break you. Inside the box was a single photograph and a letter folded neatly beneath it. The photograph stopped my breath. It was of my father standing beside a woman I didn't recognize, younger than him, her smile radiant, her hand resting on his arm. And in her arms, a little girl, maybe 4 years old. My heart pounded as I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. My father's. "If you're reading this, then I've failed to tell you the truth while I was still alive. Her name is Grace. She is my daughter. Your sister. I made mistakes, Maggie. I let my pride destroy the people I loved. If there's any mercy left in your heart, find her. She deserves to know she belongs." My vision blurred. I read the letter 3 times, my tears staining the ink until it bled. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was hollow. How many secrets can one man bury before his soul runs out of room? I didn't have time to process it because footsteps echoed in the hallway. Peter's voice followed, low but sharp. "You're up early." He walked in, his tie already knotted, his expression perfectly composed. Too composed. He noticed the box instantly. "What's that?" I slid it shut, my pulse spiking. "Just old papers." He narrowed his eyes. "You're not good at lying, Maggie. You never were." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, I don't know what Dad told you before he died, but you need to stop digging. There are things you don't understand." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Then explain it to me." He stared at me for a long time before sighing. "It's better if you let it go. Trust me, this family's already ruined enough." And then he left. Just like that. No explanation, no warmth. Just the echo of his shoes fading down the hallway. I sat there trembling, the box clutched in my hands. Trust him? I couldn't even trust the walls in this house. But I couldn't ignore my father's letter either. Somewhere out there was a woman named Grace, a sister I'd never met. Later that day, Clara stopped by with groceries. Her soft eyes scanned my face. "You look like you haven't slept." "I found something," I whispered, showing her the letter. She gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh, Maggie." I expected her to be shocked, maybe angry, but instead she just looked relieved. "I knew it," she murmured. "I always felt there was something he wasn't telling us." I could see it in his eyes when we'd visit him in the nursing home. He carried a sadness he couldn't explain. I wanted to believe that my father had loved this other child, that he'd wanted to do right by her in the end. But all I could think about was how my brothers would use this to tear everything apart. Clara placed her hand over mine. "Maybe finding her will bring closure, for all of us." That night, as I sat in the dim glow of the study lamp, I began searching. The woman in the photo looked familiar somehow, like a shadow from childhood. It took hours of online searches and old address books before I found a name that matched: Grace Matthews, age 24, Memphis, Tennessee. My heart raced. Could that really be her? Just as I started writing down the address, a loud bang shattered the silence. I jumped up. The sound had come from the back door. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed the nearest thing, a fireplace poker, and crept down the hallway. The door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. Outside, the night was still, the stars sharp and cold. I saw movement near the tree line, a shadow slipping away. My hands shook as I locked the door and turned on every light in the house. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "Stop looking. Some truths will bury you too." I sank into a chair, trembling so hard the phone nearly fell from my grip. Fear mixed with fury, burning through the fog in my mind. Someone knew about the letter. Someone didn't want me to find Grace. The next morning, I drove into town to visit the lawyer who'd handled the will. Mr. Fletcher was an older man, calm and deliberate, the kind of person who never raised his voice but always knew more than he said. When I showed him the letter, his eyes flickered. "I wondered when you'd find that." "You knew?" I demanded. He hesitated. "Your father told me about Grace years ago. He wanted to include her in the will, but Peter convinced him not to. Said it would destroy the family. Your father regretted it deeply." The room tilted slightly. My brother had known. All this time he'd known. Mr. Fletcher leaned forward. "Maggie, your father left you that house for a reason. There's more hidden there. Something he wanted you to see." I left his office feeling both lighter and heavier, like I'd just swallowed a truth too big to carry. When I returned home, the front door was ajar again. I froze. Everything inside looked untouched, but the study, my father's desk, was different. The wooden box was gone. That's when I realized the war had already begun. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like it was watching me. Every time the floorboards creaked or the wind brushed against the windows, I jumped. I couldn't stop replaying the same thought. Someone had been inside while I was gone. They hadn't taken money or jewelry, just that box. The one that held my father's confession. Whoever they were, they didn't want the truth to live long enough to be spoken aloud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the study, staring at the empty space on the shelf where the box used to be. The air smelled faintly of smoke, even though the fireplace hadn't been lit in days. I tried to pray, but the words tangled in my throat. It had been years since I'd talked to God with any real faith. I used to believe he listened. Now I wasn't so sure. At some point after midnight, I heard a faint thump from upstairs. My pulse spiked. I grabbed my phone and crept toward the staircase. Every step groaned beneath my feet. The noise came again, softer this time, like something falling over. I pushed open the door to my parents' old bedroom. Dust motes swirled in the moonlight. Nothing seemed out of place until I saw the closet door cracked open. I reached for it slowly, every instinct in me screaming not to. Inside, everything looked as it had since my mother died. Her dresses still hanging, her perfume bottles lined neatly on the shelf. I almost closed the door when I noticed a loose panel at the back of the closet. The wood looked newer than the rest. My hands trembled as I pried it open. Behind it, tucked into the wall cavity, was a metal tin. Inside were more letters, dozens of them, yellowed and brittle, each addressed to the same person, Grace Matthews. My father had written her for years. Letters he'd never mailed. I sank onto the floor, tears burning my eyes as I read. I wish I'd been brave enough to tell them all. "You're not a mistake, Grace. You're my chance at redemption." Another said, "If Maggie ever finds this, tell her I loved her even when she couldn't see it." My chest ached with something sharp and undefinable. I had hated him for so long, for the shouting, the coldness, the manipulation, but now, holding his words, I saw a broken man trying to make peace before the end. And somehow, I was part of that peace. The next morning, I called Clara. She came immediately, her hair still wet, her worry etched deep. "You found more?" I nodded, showing her the letters. She read one, her eyes glistening. "He was trying to fix it, Maggie. He just didn't know how." Before I could respond, a car engine rumbled outside. I glanced through the curtains. Peter's black SUV. My stomach twisted. "He can't see these," I whispered. Clara nodded and helped me hide the letters inside the piano bench. Peter stormed in without knocking. "You've been busy," he said, his tone dripping with suspicion. I talked to Fletcher. "I know you went digging. Is that what this is now?" I snapped. "Digging? It's called learning the truth, Peter." He stepped closer, his jaw tight. "The truth? You think you can handle it? Dad wasn't the saint you're pretending he was. He lied to all of us. He ruined Mom. He ruined this family." His words hit like slaps. "And what about you?" I said quietly. "You knew about Grace. You kept it secret." "Why?" His face darkened. "Because it wasn't our problem." He made his choices. I was protecting what was left of this family. I shook my head. "No, you were protecting yourself." For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His hands balled into fists, then he turned and left, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. Clara exhaled shakily. "He's losing control." "Or he's realizing he already lost," I whispered. That evening, I found a small package left on the porch. No address. Just my name. Inside was the photograph I'd seen before. The one with my father, the woman, and the little girl. But this time, the woman's face had been slashed through with a knife. My stomach dropped. Beneath the photo was a note. "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." I felt sick. Whoever was behind this wasn't just angry. They were dangerous. I called the sheriff, a man named Harold Jenkins who had known my family for years. He came by, examined the photo, and sighed. "Could be a prank, could be a warning, but you should be careful, Maggie. Folks get ugly when money's involved." "It's not about money," I said. "It's about secrets." He gave me a long look. Secrets and money, deadliest mix there is. That night, I couldn't bear to stay in my room. I fell asleep on the couch, clutching one of my father's old letters like a lifeline. Around 3 a.m, I woke to a faint melody. The piano was playing. My blood ran cold. I sat up slowly, every muscle in my body tense. The notes were soft, almost hesitant, like someone testing the keys. My mother's song, "Amazing Grace." I crept toward the living room. The keys moved on their own, faintly in the moonlight. Then I saw it. One of the letters I'd hidden was lying open on the bench, fluttering slightly as if a breeze had passed through. My heart pounded, but there was no wind. I whispered into the silence, "What do you want me to see?" And then I noticed the handwriting on the back of the letter. A line I hadn't read before. "The truth is beneath the floor where faith once stood." I looked down at the floorboards under the piano. The wood was darker there, worn from years of footsteps. I knelt and tapped one plank. It sounded hollow. My fingers shook as I pried it loose. Beneath it was a small envelope wrapped in plastic, sealed tight. Inside was a flash drive. Clara and I watched the screen together as the file opened. It was a video recording. My father sitting at his desk, pale and thin. His voice trembled. If you're watching this, it means I couldn't fix what I broke. There are things my sons did that no one knows. Money laundered through the company, accounts offshore. I kept the records hidden. I trusted Maggie to find the truth. The room went still. Clara covered her mouth. Oh my God. Tears blurred my vision. He left this for me. He wanted me to stop them. Outside, thunder rumbled like judgment itself. I felt something awaken inside me. Not just fear, but resolve. My brothers thought they could silence the truth, but my father had trusted me for a reason. And I wasn't going to let his last words die in the dark. The storm outside grew louder, wind howling against the old windows. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready, because sometimes the only way to make peace with the past is to burn it down and start again. For days after that dinner, the house seemed quieter than usual, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I went about my routines like a ghost, wiping counters that were already clean, folding towels with trembling hands, pretending everything was fine. But inside, the silence screamed. It screamed about years of lies, of polite smiles stretched over pain, of pretending to be fine when the ground beneath me had already cracked wide open. One morning, I found an old photo album while cleaning the attic. Dust covered the leather binding, and when I brushed it away, memories fell out like shattered glass. There was Henry in his army uniform, smiling proudly. There was me, so young, so full of hope, standing beside him at our wedding. And there, tucked in the back, a picture I didn't remember, Henry with a woman I didn't recognize, her hand resting a little too close on his arm. My breath caught. My heart, already bruised, sank into my stomach. I wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe a colleague, maybe an old friend. But the way he looked at her, the way his body leaned toward hers, it was a language I knew too well. That picture felt like a confession without words. I sat there for a long time, staring at the faces frozen in time, wondering how many truths had been buried beneath years of silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked, loud and merciless, reminding me of every second I'd wasted trying to hold together a life built on fragile trust. I thought about calling my daughter, Anna, to tell her what I'd found, but the words felt too heavy to say out loud. She had her own life, her own worries. She didn't need mine added to the pile. So instead, I prayed. Not the quiet, polite kind of prayer I'd whispered before meals. No, this was the desperate kind, the kind that comes from the pit of your soul when everything else has failed. Lord, I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to forgive what I don't even fully understand. But please, give me peace. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of feeling small. The next morning, I went to church. I hadn't been there in weeks, maybe months, but something inside me pulled me back. As soon as I stepped through those old wooden doors, the scent of candles and hymn books wrapped around me like an old blanket. Pastor Reynolds looked surprised to see me but didn't ask questions. He just smiled and said, "It's good to see you, Margaret." His voice carried that kind of warmth that could melt winter ice. During the sermon, he spoke about truth, how it hurts, how it heals, how it demands courage. The truth, he said, isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to set you free. I felt those words pierce through me like sunlight through fog. After service, I sat alone in one of the pews, long after everyone had gone. That's when someone touched my shoulder. It was Evelyn, Henry's sister. Her eyes were soft, but her lips trembled. "Margaret," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." My heart clenched. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it, but something told me I had to. She sat beside me, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "You know Henry loved you," she began. "But he wasn't perfect. There was a time." Years ago, when things between you were hard, he made mistakes, one in particular, but he regretted it for the rest of his life. I stared at her, frozen. My voice came out like a whisper. Was it her, the woman in the photo? Evelyn nodded slowly. It was short, and it ended. He came to me after, broken. He wanted to tell you, but he couldn't bear to hurt you. So he carried it, all those years. The room tilted. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal I'd suspected now had a name, a shape, a memory. And yet, beneath the hurt, a strange kind of sorrow bloomed. Not just for me, but for him too. For all the years he'd lived with his guilt. Evelyn reached for my hand. He loved you, Margaret. You were his anchor. Please remember that. I nodded, unable to speak. That night, I walked to the lake behind our house. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight, still and deep, like the secrets I'd carried inside me. I thought about all the times Henry and I had stood there together, talking about dreams, about growing old side by side. Now, those dreams were ashes. I took the photo I'd found and held it in my hands. For a moment, I wanted to tear it apart, to throw it into the water and watch it sink. But something inside me stopped. Maybe forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. Maybe it's about learning to live with it, to make peace with the pain so it doesn't own you anymore. So instead, I whispered to the wind, I forgive you, Henry. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to breathe again. The tears came then, hot, relentless, cleansing. They fell into the lake, merging with the water until I couldn't tell where my pain ended and peace began. When I walked back home, I felt lighter, though nothing about my life had changed. The truth still hurt. The past was still the past. But for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could start again. And as I looked up at the night sky, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing love over bitterness, even when love feels like the harder choice. Tomorrow I would call Anna. I would tell her everything, not to burden her, but to let her see that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and still choosing to stand. The morning after that night by the lake, sunlight, spilled through my curtains in a way that almost felt symbolic, like the universe had decided I'd endured enough darkness. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the steam rising from the mug, as if it could tell me what came next. The house was quiet again, but this time, the silence didn't ache as much. I had made peace with a truth that once would have shattered me, and somehow that peace felt like strength. I picked up the phone and dialed Anna's number, my hands trembling slightly. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and familiar. "Mom, is everything okay?" she asked, instantly concerned. I hesitated, unsure where to start. I found some things about your father," I said softly. Things I never knew before. But I think I finally understand him better now. There was a long pause on the other end before Anna spoke again, her voice gentler. "Do you want me to come over?" I smiled even though she couldn't see it. "No, sweetheart. I just needed to tell you I'm okay. Really okay. For the first time in a long while." After the call, I sat there for a while, thinking about what it meant to be okay. Maybe it wasn't about being happy all the time or having everything figured out. Maybe it was just about making peace with your own story, even the chapters you wish you could rewrite. Later that day, I decided to clean the study, a room Henry had once used for his paperwork and projects. It had been years since I'd gone through his things. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of his cologne still lingered in the fabric of his old chair. As I wiped the desk, my hand brushed against a drawer that didn't open easily. It was locked. I almost left it alone, but curiosity, that stubborn whisper inside me, urged me to look deeper. I found a small key taped under the drawer. When I unlocked it, I discovered a worn leather journal and a few yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon. My heart thudded. I sat down and opened the journal, the pages filled with Henry's handwriting, slanted, strong, unmistakable. The first entry was dated 25 years ago. It began with words that broke something open inside me. If she ever finds this, I hope she knows I never stopped loving her. I couldn't move. My fingers traced the ink like it could bring him back. Each page that followed was a confession, a window into a heart that had been torn between guilt and love. He wrote about the mistake with that woman, her name was Claire, and how it had haunted him every day since. I thought confessing would destroy her, one entry read, so I carried the sin myself. But the burden only grew heavier. I see her eyes when she laughs, and I wonder how she would look if she ever found out. Would she still see the man she once believed in? Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. He wrote about me, about Anna, about how he prayed for the strength to be better. And in between the guilt and regret, there were small moments, little glimpses of his humanity. Margaret made blueberry pie today. Said it was too sweet, but I think it's perfect. She doesn't know that just sitting at the same table with her feels like grace. That one line undid me. I pressed the journal against my chest, sobbing like I hadn't in years. All the anger I'd carried seemed to dissolve, replaced by something I didn't expect. Compassion. Henry had been flawed, deeply so, but he had loved me in his own broken way. The letters were to Anna, unsent. The first one was written on her 16th birthday. "My darling girl," it began. "I may not always show it, but you're the best thing I've ever helped create. If I've been distant, it's not because I don't care. It's because I've never forgiven myself enough to know how to love you properly." I felt my chest tighten. He had loved her too. He just didn't know how to show it without his guilt getting in the way. As I sat there surrounded by ghosts of his words, I realized something powerful. Forgiveness wasn't about setting him free anymore. It was about setting myself free. I'd carried the weight of resentment for so long that I didn't notice how heavy it had become until it was gone. I decided then that Anna deserved to know the truth, but not the bitter version, the honest, healing one. The version that told her her father was imperfect, but not unloving. That night, I made dinner for two and invited her over. When she arrived, she looked tired. Work, life, the usual grind. But when she saw the candles lit on the table, she smiled softly. "This feels special," she said, setting her purse down. I nodded. "It is." We ate in silence for a while before I finally said, "Anna, I found your father's journal." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What did it say?" she whispered. I took a deep breath. It said he loved us, deeply, but he made mistakes, and he never stopped feeling sorry for them. Tears welled in her eyes. "I always thought he didn't care," she said. "When he missed my graduation, I thought I wasn't enough for him." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You were more than enough. He just didn't know how to forgive himself enough to show it." We sat there for a long time, holding hands, crying quietly. There was no anger in that moment, just the strange, tender peace that comes when you finally understand someone's brokenness. Before she left, I gave her one of the letters. "He wrote this for you," I said. She held it like it was fragile glass. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, "for telling me the truth." After she drove away, I stood by the window watching the taillights fade into the night. For the first time, I felt like the pieces of my life, though cracked, were finally fitting back together. The past had knocked again, yes, but this time, instead of running from it, I opened the door. And in doing so, I found something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. Not as an escape from pain, but as the quiet strength to live with it. A week passed after Anna read her father's letter, and though the ache between us had softened, the house still felt like it was holding its breath. Every room whispered old memories, laughter that once filled the kitchen, arguments that had left the walls trembling, and the quiet apologies that came too late. I tried to fill my days with small routines, watering the garden, baking bread, feeding the birds. But there was something heavy still resting in the corner of my heart. It wasn't pain anymore. It was something deeper, unfinished grief. I had forgiven Henry, yes, but forgiveness doesn't erase the longing for what could have been. That Saturday morning, I found myself standing at the back of the closet, pulling out a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were all the keepsakes of a life shared. His pocket watch, an old wedding card, his favorite pen, even the tie he wore the day Anna was born. Each item carried a story, and with every touch, I felt the pull of time, the way love leaves fingerprints that never fade. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope addressed to me. My name was written in his familiar handwriting, shaky but deliberate. I froze. I hadn't seen this before. My heart began to race as I sat down on the edge of the bed and opened it. "Margaret," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say goodbye properly. I know I failed you in more ways than one, but if you can remember anything about me, I hope it's not the mistakes. I hope you remember the laughter, the way we danced in the kitchen when the radio played our song, the mornings we spent watching the sunrise, believing that growing old together was our destiny. I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't know how to show it. Please don't let my failures define your joy. You deserve more. You always did. Find peace, and when you do, know that it's my love, finally setting you free." By the time I reached the end, my vision was blurred with tears. I pressed the letter to my chest, whispering, "You're forgiven, Henry. Truly forgiven." It was strange. For the first time, I didn't feel sorrow. I felt release, like every part of my heart that had been chained to regret had finally been unlocked. I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the box, and decided that maybe it was time to let him go. Not with pain, but with gratitude. That evening, I drove to the hill behind St. Mary's Church, the place where Henry and I had first met all those decades ago. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and rose, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and rain. I brought the box with me, each item carefully wrapped in a small linen cloth. Standing beneath the old oak tree, I whispered a prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for giving me the strength to love and the strength to let go." I knelt down and began to bury the box. With each handful of soil, I whispered a memory. For the laughter, a handful of earth. For the dreams we shared, another. For the lessons I had to learn the hard way. By the time I was done, my hands were dirty, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. I placed a single white rose on top and stood there quietly, feeling the wind brush against my face like a gentle goodbye. Just as I turned to leave, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Anna. "Mom," she called softly, "I saw your car here. I wanted to make sure you were okay." I smiled through my tears. "I'm more than okay, sweetheart. I'm finally free." She walked over and stood beside me, staring at the spot where the rose lay. "You let him go," she said quietly. "I did," I whispered, "but I'll always keep the best parts of him in my heart." We stood there together, mother and daughter, the sky turning to twilight above us. It felt like a moment of holy stillness. Not grief, not loss, but peace. Anna reached for my hand, her fingers warm and steady. "You know," she said, "I think Dad would be proud of you." I smiled. "Maybe, but more than that, I think he'd be relieved. Because love that stays trapped in sorrow isn't love, it's a prison. And I think we both deserve freedom." When we walked back to the car, Anna looked at me in a way she hadn't before. Not as a fragile old woman to be protected, but as someone who had survived, someone who had found her way through the fire and come out softer, not bitter. "Mom," she said as we reached the car door, "you've taught me something I don't think I'll ever forget." I turned to her, curious. "What's that, dear?" She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "That forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means strength, the kind that builds peace out of pain." That night, back at home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the floor. I could almost feel Henry's presence, not as a ghost, but as a memory finally at rest. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt alive again, filled with quiet grace. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the anger, the discovery, the healing, and I realized something profound. Life doesn't always give you closure in the way you expect. Sometimes it gives you understanding instead, and understanding is enough. Before going to bed, I took out my old Bible and slipped Henry's letter between the pages of Psalm 34. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I smiled, whispering, He did save me after all. Then I turned off the light and let the peace wash over me like a lullaby. For the first time in decades, I didn't dream about the past. I dreamed about tomorrow, about open windows, sunlit mornings, laughter echoing in the kitchen again, and the sound of new beginnings quietly unfolding in the distance. The following morning, I woke to the soft hum of the ocean outside my bedroom window. The waves lapped rhythmically against the shore, a gentle reminder that life moves forward, whether we are ready or not. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting golden streaks across the room. I poured a cup of coffee and stood on the veranda, letting the breeze wash over me. Peace had settled in my heart, but deep down, I knew life wasn't finished testing me yet. A car pulled up the gravel driveway, breaking the morning calm. I squinted through the glass doors and saw a familiar figure stepping out, hesitant yet determined. It was Leonard, my late husband's oldest friend. His eyes widened when he spotted me, as though seeing a ghost he had long mourned. He approached slowly, his hands buried in his pockets. "Margaret," he said, his voice catching, "I heard about everything. I had to see you in person." I smiled, warmth tugging at my chest. "Come in, Leonard, coffee?" He nodded and followed me into the kitchen. As I poured, he looked around, taking in the subtle elegance of the room. "I had no idea," he whispered, eyes landing on the small stack of family photographs we had carefully framed. You've done all this yourself?" I nodded. "Every step. It wasn't easy. Some days I wanted to give up entirely. But the truth is, this house, these memories, they're part of me. And finally, I needed to claim them, and myself." Leonard pulled out a chair and sat across from me. He studied my face, as though searching for the years lost between us. "I've never seen you like this," he said softly. "Strong, unshakable, fearless." A quiet laugh escaped me. It took losing everything I thought I had, and discovering that my true strength was never in them, but in me. His eyes glistened. "I'm proud of you, Margaret. Truly proud. But I need to ask, and I hope it's not too bold, what will you do now? You've reclaimed your home, your dignity, your family. What comes next?" I set my cup down, considering my words carefully. "Now I live," I said simply. "I take each day as it comes, and I build the kind of life I always dreamed of. One with purpose, love, and freedom. I don't need validation anymore. I need connection, truth, and to leave something meaningful behind." Leonard nodded, absorbing every word. "Meaningful, huh?" he murmured. "I think you've already started." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Anna texting from the city. "Mom, guess who's here?" "Dad and Claire are waiting at the gate." My chest tightened. Seeing Henry again after all this time was something I hadn't anticipated. Part of me wanted to avoid it entirely, to preserve the hard-won peace, but another part knew that confronting the past was the only way to truly move forward. I looked at Leonard, who raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Ready?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." I stepped out onto the veranda and watched them drive up, Henry and Claire, hand in hand, their expressions a mix of nervousness and longing. Henry's hair had turned silver, his posture slightly stooped with age, but his eyes still held that familiar warmth, tinged with guilt. Claire, ever composed, looked anxious, as if she were preparing herself for an emotional storm. The car stopped and they hesitated before stepping out. I waited, silent, letting them feel the weight of the moment. Henry finally spoke, voice trembling. Margaret, But no words could bridge the 15-year gap in that instant. I studied him, memorizing every line etched by time and regret, and finally I said, Henry, come forward. Let's talk, honestly. He swallowed, taking tentative steps toward me. Claire lingered behind him, hands clasped nervously. Once we were all standing on the veranda, I felt the past swell in the air like an invisible tide. It's been a long time, I said softly. 15 years to be exact. And there's a lot to unpack. Henry nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I know I've failed you in so many ways. I can't change the past, but I want to try to make things right. Please, Margaret, hear me. I studied him for a long moment, then finally nodded. I will hear you. But understand this. What happened, the choices you made, the silence, the hurt, they're all part of the truth. And the truth matters. Claire stepped forward then, voice trembling. Margaret, I held up a hand. Not yet. First, Henry, then we'll see about you. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. I was blind, Margaret. I didn't see your struggles, your strength, the sacrifices you made. I thought I could control life, protect you, but I failed. I hurt you. I lost sight of the woman I loved, the woman I still love. I'm sorry. The words landed heavily, like the weight of years falling from his shoulders and mine. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. Henry, what I needed most wasn't control or protection. It was respect. It was acknowledgement. It was the truth that you valued me as your equal, not as someone dependent or fragile. His hands trembled slightly. I see that now, and I regret every moment I didn't give you what you deserved. I can't take back the past, but I can. Try to honor you now. The air seemed to shift around us. Claire, sensing the gravity of the moment, took a cautious step closer. Margaret, I realize now that I underestimated you too. I judged without understanding, and I'm sorry, truly. I want to be part of your life again if you'll let me. I looked at her carefully. Actions speak louder than words, Claire. Apologies are a start, but real change is in what you do next. She nodded, eyes glistening, understanding the unspoken truth. Henry reached for my hand, tentative, reverent. I let him take it. I don't expect everything to be perfect, Margaret. But I want to try, to rebuild, to honor you, to be part of your life in a way that truly respects who you are. I felt a surge of emotion, love, sorrow, hope, all tangled together. Henry, I said softly, this doesn't erase the past, but it can shape the future, and that's what matters now. We stood there for a long moment, hands clasped, eyes locked. The ocean beyond us seemed to mirror the turbulence and calm of our hearts. Finally, Henry whispered, Thank you, Margaret, for even giving me this chance. I nodded, feeling tears stream freely now, not from pain, but from relief. Anna appeared at the veranda door, having watched silently, her eyes wide. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around all of us. Mom, Dad, Claire? I'm so glad we're here together. Her voice was small but steady, carrying the hope that had been absent for so long. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection, in courage, in the willingness to face the truth, no matter how painful. We spent the day talking, laughing, sometimes crying, but always honestly. For the first time in decades, the house felt alive again, filled with possibility, not haunted by the weight of unspoken words. By evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky with fire and gold, I stood on the veranda, Henry by my side, Anna leaning against me, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Completeness. It wasn't perfection. It wasn't erasing the past, but it was hope. And sometimes, hope is stronger than anything else. The days that followed felt like a fragile dream, a delicate weaving of past regrets and new beginnings. Henry's presence was no longer a ghost hovering at the edges of my life, but a living, breathing reality I had to reconcile with. Every interaction, every conversation, carried the weight of the years we had lost, but also the promise of something we could finally build together. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the living room windows, Leonard arrived unexpectedly. His brow was furrowed, his usually calm demeanor shadowed by concern. "Margaret," he said quietly, "we need to talk. There's something you should know before you get too comfortable with all of this." I motioned for him to sit, sensing the gravity in his tone. "What is it, Leonard?" I asked, gripping my cup of tea. He hesitated, searching for words. "It's about Henry, about the past he's never told you." A chill ran down my spine. "Go on," I said softly, bracing myself. Leonard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Years ago, before he married Claire, Henry made choices, risky choices, that weren't just mistakes, Margaret. They endangered people you might not even know about." My chest tightened. I wanted to argue, to dismiss him, but something in Leonard's eyes told me he wasn't exaggerating. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because it's coming to the surface, and you deserve to know before it reaches you fully." I spent the rest of the day in a haze, memories of our early years together colliding with Leonard's warning. I couldn't help but replay every interaction, every hidden smile, every whispered word, searching for the truth in the fragments of our shared past. Finally, I decided I had to confront Henry. If we were to rebuild anything, it had to be on truth, not illusions. That evening, I found him in the study, flipping through old letters and photographs. He looked up, startled by the intensity of my gaze. "Margaret, what is it?" I held his eyes firmly. "Leonard told me things about your past. Things you never shared? I need to hear it from you, now." His face paled and a shadow crossed his features. He gestured for me to sit, his hands trembling slightly. I never wanted this to come out. I thought burying it, moving forward, would protect you. But I see now that it only put you in the dark, and that was wrong." I took a deep breath, willing myself to remain calm. "Tell me everything," I said. Henry's voice was low, strained, as he began to recount the years before our marriage, the decisions he had made in desperation, the people hurt, the lives affected. He spoke of failed investments, betrayals, and choices that skirted the line between morality and survival. Each word was like a stone dropping in my chest, heavy and unyielding. "I didn't know how to tell you," he admitted, tears streaking his face. I was ashamed. I thought I could fix things quietly, without dragging you into my mess. I never imagined it would come to this, that the truth would be necessary for our survival. I sat back, letting the weight of his confessions settle. The anger bubbled beneath my skin, sharp and hot. "Henry," I whispered, "why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you think I could handle the truth?" He reached out, tentative, desperate. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd leave me. Afraid you'd see me as the man I was. Not the man I wanted to be. Margaret, I was lost and I let it spill into your life, into your world, and I hate myself for it." The raw vulnerability in his voice struck a chord deep within me. Part of me wanted to retreat, to shield myself from the storm of his past mistakes. But another part, the part that had survived loss, betrayal, and pain, knew that facing this darkness together was the only path to true reconciliation. I stood, walking slowly to the window, gazing out at the fading light over the horizon. "Henry," I said quietly, "we're standing at a crossroads. I can't undo what's been done. I can't erase the past, but we can decide what comes next. That choice, that's ours." He stepped closer, his shadow falling across the room, a tangible reminder of the years we had lost and the fragile hope we still held. "I want to choose the right path," he said earnestly. "With you. Always with you." The following days were tense. Conversations were careful, deliberate, every word weighed with intention. I found myself questioning my own heart, my own forgiveness, and the boundaries of trust. Yet, amidst the tension, there was a strange beauty in the raw honesty between us. It was as though the cracks in our foundation allowed light to seep in, illuminating truths we had never faced before. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the windows, Anna came to me quietly. "Mom," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "I can feel it. The change. You and Dad. It's like you're both different people, but connected in a way I've never seen before." I smiled faintly, brushing her hair from her face. "Yes, baby. It's not perfect. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real. And sometimes, being real is the only way to heal." Henry joined us then, standing silently in the doorway, his eyes reflecting the dim light. I motioned for him to sit beside me. "We're learning to be honest," I said. "To face what scares us, what hurts us. That's how we survive. Together, not apart." He nodded, his hand brushing mine lightly. "I'll do whatever it takes, Margaret. Whatever it takes to earn back your trust, your love, your life." As the night deepened, the storm outside mirrored the storm within us. But for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. Ready to face the shadows, ready to embrace the truths, and ready to rebuild, not the past, but the future. Because true courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. By the end of that week, a subtle shift had occurred. Henry's actions spoke louder than words, small gestures of care, attentiveness, and respect that slowly began to rebuild the fragile bridge between us. Leonard, ever watchful, nodded with quiet approval when he noticed the changes. "You're stronger than you think," he said to me one morning. And so is he, if he's willing to fight for it. And fight he did. Every day, every choice, every apology without expectation became a testament to the possibility of redemption. I realized that the path forward wasn't about perfection. It was about truth, courage, and the willingness to confront even the darkest corners of our lives. And in that willingness, even the deepest shadows began to recede, replaced by the faint but unmistakable light of hope. The days that followed Henry's confession were quieter than I expected, yet the silence carried its own tension. It wasn't the peace of resolution, but the fragile hush that precedes a storm. Every glance, every word, every pause felt loaded with the weight of unspoken fears and lingering doubts. I tried to keep my routine, to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Anna. But inside, a tempest raged that I could not ignore. One afternoon, as sunlight struggled through gray clouds, I received an unexpected letter. The envelope was thick, official, and addressed in a handwriting I didn't recognize. My hands shook slightly as I broke the seal. Inside, the words were a hammer to my chest. A legal notice, naming Henry in connection with an unresolved case from years ago. My breath caught, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just past mistakes. This was a storm that had followed us, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. I confronted Henry immediately, my voice tight with disbelief. "Henry, this is serious. This isn't just about us anymore. It's bigger. It's legal, criminal." He looked at me, eyes wide, shadows of fear flickering across his face. I thought it was closed," he said, voice low, almost breaking. "I handled it years ago. I thought the consequences were behind me. Margaret, I never wanted you to be dragged into this." "Dragged into this?" I repeated sharply. "We're already in it, Henry. You can't just think your past disappears because you hope it will. I need the truth. Everything." His shoulders sagged, and he sank into a chair, his hands gripping the arms tightly. Okay, he muttered. "I'll tell you everything. But it's not easy. And once I do, there's no turning back." I nodded, my heart hammering in my chest. I had already committed to this path, to the truth, to the confrontation, to the possibility of total devastation. "Go on," I said, my voice trembling despite my attempt at steadiness. He took a deep breath and began to recount a series of events I had only vaguely suspected, decisions made in desperation, alliances formed with dangerous people, money lost, promises broken. Every detail painted a picture of a man struggling against circumstances he barely understood, yet also highlighted choices that could not be excused. As he spoke, I felt anger rise within me, sharp and hot, slicing through my confusion and fear. "Why didn't you tell me before we Before we rebuilt this life together? I demanded. Why drag me into this web of secrets now? He bowed his head, tears spilling freely. Because I thought I could protect you. Because I thought I could fix it alone. And I see now, I failed. I failed you, Margaret. I failed Anna, and I hate myself for it every single day. The truth hung between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. I felt the pull of despair, the temptation to turn away, to protect my heart and my daughter from the chaos Henry's past had created. But beneath that fear, a quieter, stronger voice urged me to stay. This wasn't just about Henry's mistakes. It was about whether we could confront them together, whether we could survive the storm with our hearts intact. Over the next few days, the tension escalated. Calls from lawyers, meetings with authorities, whispers from people who had once been part of Henry's world. All of it pressed in on us relentlessly. Anna, sensitive to the shifts in the household, began to withdraw, seeking solace in her books and sketches, avoiding the conversations that had become unavoidable. I tried to shield her, to maintain some sense of safety, but every lie of omission, every half-truth I offered to protect her, felt like a betrayal of the very trust I was trying to rebuild. One night, after Anna had gone to bed, I found Henry in the living room, staring at old photographs spread across the coffee table. I don't know how to fix this, he whispered, voice barely audible. I don't know if there's a way to make it right. I sat beside him, the cool glass of the coffee table pressing against my palms, grounding me in the moment. Henry, I said softly, maybe fixing isn't the answer. Maybe the answer is facing it together. Whatever happens, we face it as a family, not as enemies of our own pasts. He turned to me, eyes haunted yet desperate. Can you really stand by me through this? Can you watch me crumble and still hold on? I took his hand, squeezing it tightly, feeling the tremor of fear beneath his grip. I can, I said, but I won't let us be destroyed by fear. Not now, not ever. We fight for each other, for Anna, for the life we've begun to rebuild. That's the choice we make. Days blurred into nights, each one heavier than the last. Court dates, late-night meetings, and unexpected confrontations with people from Henry's past left us emotionally raw, exhausted, and tested in ways I had never imagined. Yet through it all, I noticed subtle shifts, small gestures of care, brief moments of vulnerability, and a quiet determination in Henry that reminded me why I had loved him and why I was willing to fight for him now. One afternoon, as the rain fell in sheets outside, Anna came to me, her small hands clasped together. "Mom," she said, eyes wide, "I don't like seeing Dad sad, but I want to help. I want to be brave like you." My chest tightened, overwhelmed by both pride and fear. "Anna," I whispered, pulling her into my arms. "Bravery isn't never being afraid. Bravery is facing what scares you the most. And right now, that's exactly what your father and I are doing." Henry joined us then, standing silently, the rain casting shadows across his face. He knelt beside us, and for a moment, the world outside, the storms, the fears, the past mistakes, seemed to vanish. "I promise," he said, voice low and earnest. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll fight for us, for you, for Anna. And I won't stop until I've earned back everything I lost." The intensity of his words, the sincerity, the vulnerability. It was almost too much to bear. But I realized then that this was the breaking point, the moment where we either succumbed to the weight of the past or rose together, stronger than ever. The choice was ours, and I chose to rise. That night, as the house settled into uneasy quiet, I felt a shift within myself. The storm was not over, and the battles ahead were far from won, but for the first time I believed that we could endure. That we could survive the shadows of our past and emerge into a life defined not by mistakes, but by courage, truth, and love. I went to bed that night with a sense of fragile hope, the kind that trembles on the edge of despair but refuses to break. Henry's hand found mine in the dark, and I squeezed it tightly, a silent affirmation that we were in this together. The path ahead was uncertain, perilous, and heart-wrenching, but at least now we would walk it side by side, unflinching, unbroken, and unafraid to face whatever came next. The days following that stormy revelation were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Life had become a delicate balance between the shadows of the past and the fragile hope of the present. Each morning felt like stepping onto a tightrope, where one misstep could send everything tumbling into chaos. Yet, amid the tension and uncertainty, a strange clarity emerged, a lesson I hadn't fully understood until the weight of truth pressed upon me. Henry worked tirelessly, meeting with lawyers, explaining every detail, and confronting the consequences of his past decisions with courage that bordered on recklessness. Watching him, I realized that true bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to stand in the face of your worst mistakes, refusing to let them define you, and taking responsibility when no one is watching. This lesson, painful as it was, transformed the way I saw him, and perhaps the way I saw myself. Anna, too, changed. She had spent weeks retreating into her small, safe world of books and sketches, but she began to emerge, bringing with her the innocence and resilience that children possess naturally. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, she handed me a drawing she had made. A family standing together under a stormy sky, yet holding hands, unbroken and unafraid. "Mom," she whispered, "we can get through anything if we stick together." Her words hit me harder than any argument, any tear, any sleepless night. In her eyes, I saw hope. Not naive hope, but the kind that is forged in struggle. The kind that survives storms because it chooses to endure. The legal battles were exhausting, often frustrating and sometimes terrifying. But through every challenge, I noticed subtle transformations within Henry. He became more reflective, more humble, and more attuned to the impact of his choices. I realized that redemption isn't a single moment of apology or a grand gesture. Redemption is a daily commitment to live honestly, to repair the damage you've caused, and to rebuild trust brick by brick. Watching him do this, I learned that forgiveness, both giving and receiving it, is not about forgetting the past, but about creating a future that is unchained by it. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling meeting with the authorities, Henry and I walked through the park near our home. The sky was heavy with clouds, yet sunlight peeked through in golden streaks, illuminating the puddles left by a morning rain. He turned to me, his expression weary but determined. "Margaret, I know I can't undo everything I've done," he said quietly, "but I want to be a man worthy of you, of Anna, and of the life we're trying to build. Will you let me?" I looked at him, seeing the raw sincerity in his eyes, and felt a warmth spread through my chest. "Henry," I said, "I've already chosen to walk this path with you. Redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to fight for what's right every single day. So I see that in you now, and I choose to believe in it." The storm within our home slowly began to lift. The past remained present, but it no longer dictated our every thought and action. Instead, it became a teacher, showing us the value of truth, the necessity of courage, and the power of unwavering commitment. Every tear shed, every argument endured, and every sleepless night taught us that life's greatest tests are not obstacles to happiness, but opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. As the weeks passed, we began to rebuild our lives with intention. Simple moments, cooking dinner together, reading bedtime stories to Anna, sharing quiet conversations on the porch, became sacred. We learned to communicate with honesty, even when the truth was uncomfortable. We learned to listen without judgment, to forgive without hesitation, and to love with a fierce determination that could withstand anything. These lessons, hard-earned and deeply felt, became the foundation upon which our renewed family life stood. Looking back, I understand now that the greatest value of our struggles was not in the resolution of legal matters or the closure of past mistakes, but in the transformation it sparked within us. We learned that life is fragile, that trust is precious, and that love is a conscious choice, one that must be nurtured, defended, and renewed daily. Our trials taught us empathy, patience, and the courage to face the unknown without flinching. I want to share this truth with you. Whoever you are reading or watching this story, your past does not define you, but your willingness to confront it does. Your mistakes, no matter how grave, are not the end of your story. Redemption is always possible if you are willing to face the truth, take responsibility, and move forward with integrity. And in doing so, you not only heal yourself, but you create space for those you love to grow, trust, and flourish alongside you. So, take a moment to reflect on your own life. Where have you been running from the truth? What fears have held you back from seeking forgiveness or offering it? What steps can you take today, no matter how small, to rebuild trust, strengthen relationships, and live with authenticity? The answers may not be easy, but they are worth pursuing. Because the life that awaits on the other side of courage is brighter than anything fear can dim. Before I end this part of our journey, I want to leave you with one final thought. Hope is not passive. It is not waiting for storms to pass. Hope is active, choosing to stand firm, to act with integrity, and to love with unwavering determination. It is choosing to rise after every fall, to speak truth in the face of lies, and to embrace life fully, even when it hurts. If our story has moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of truth and redemption, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Join us as we continue to explore the lessons life teaches us through trials, heartbreak, and unexpected moments of grace. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to face the past, rebuild what's broken, and embrace a future filled with love, courage, and hope. Remember, the storms of life will come. They will test you, challenge you, and push you to your limits. But within those storms lies the opportunity for transformation, the chance to rise stronger, and the possibility to create a life that reflects the best of who you are. Resilient, compassionate, and unafraid to love. We are living proof that even in the darkest times, when fear and doubt threaten to overwhelm us, redemption is possible, and love can heal what was once broken. Let this story be a reminder that your life, your choices, and your heart matter. And as you navigate your own journey, may you find the courage to face your past, the wisdom to embrace the present, and the hope to build a future that shines brighter than you ever imagined.